Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Everyday Educate podcast. I'm joined today with Leslie. How's it going, Leslie?
It's going great. How are you doing? Thank you for having
Good.
me.
Doing well, doing well. Thanks for joining. I know we connected a little bit on social, but
Mhm.
I like this more face to face, I guess. Not real face to face, but
Right.
almost face to face conversation.
Yes.
Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, how you got into um, education and specifically special needs education space, and then we can take it from there.
Sure. Well, when I was going to school, I had a bunch of friends and they were hard of hearing or deaf. And so I wanted to communicate with them and I started taking sign language. And so I met a huge community of just wonderful, amazing people in that community. Then I was always also drawn to people who thought differently, thought out of the box. I was especially drawn to people with autism, on the autism spectrum, it's all lumped together now, it's all autism, when really we know there's a huge broad range of spectrums from Asperger's, that's really with your social skills and social cues, to more severe, on the severe side of the spectrum. But I was very drawn to kids with autism, and that was really my specialty. I graduated in 1999, and I first worked in a behavior unit in a middle school, thinking I was going to save the world. Because you come out of school thinking you know everything, and really, it was a huge, wonderful awakening for me. I got to see what I was good at, what I wasn't, and through my journey, I taught in the behavior unit. I've taught high school, kindergarten. Thank a kindergarten teacher if you see a kindergarten teacher. And then really I spent most of my years in special education. I did leave the public school for a while and I went to a couple of private schools and then I went to private practice. And I did a lot of advocacy and I worked with a couple of attorneys here in Texas. And what I mean by advocacy is I was really helping families learn about the state and federal laws and how to access the general education system in a positive, collaborative manner. Because what parents want and what schools can do are sometimes two different things. So I was more like the mediator of, hey, yes, I see that you want this for your child, but here's where we're at. Or schools would say, we can't do this. So I'd say, well, what can we do to make this happen? So I did that for several years and I had some life changes and I had an opportunity to become a dyslexia therapist. So a few years ago, I went through the amazing program for Take Flight at Scottish Rite Children's Hospital in Dallas. And I'm now a dyslexia therapist and I work in the public school again. But I am looking forward to moving back into private practice at some point full time.
Nice, awesome. So your main focus now is dyslexia therapy.
Correct. That is my main focus.
Awesome, nice. Um, how are you finding that now? What are the main, I guess, day to day? Like, you get up? What are you working on day to day? Is it adults, children?
I work with students in middle school right now, and I absolutely love middle school. I mean, you just talk to them. I have four boys of my own, two biological children, two stepchildren, and they're 18 to 26, and they're boys. So it's kind of fitting just going to middle school, kind of being the mom figure. I talk to them like I talk to them. I use a little humor and sarcasm. But the day to day really is we go in, set our day, and the first thing I really do is good morning, tell me something great. Tell me something you did great yesterday, something that's happened to you, or what's going on that we need to work on. I think it's really, really important. I know there's this huge cliche of, you must build relationships with your students, but I really do. It's hard to do with, you have 30 kids in a class or 30 kids in a class, six subjects. That's very hard to do. I'm blessed to be able to have a smaller group of students that I can really connect with. So it's really that check-in, that social emotional, how are we doing today? Because we're not okay emotionally and socially, or mainly emotionally and mentally, excuse me, then like it's so hard to focus on that academics. And a lot of times the kids come to me and instead of saying, you need to do this, I ask them like, what do you think you should do? Helping them
Hmm.
problem solve that kind of in a coaching methodology. And so then our day to day is, we provide dyslexia services. We just happen to use the Take Flight program, or what's called Reading Horizons is another program that can be used where I'm at currently. And so, it really focuses on phonological awareness. Letters have names, letters have sounds. These sounds come together to make words. And then we have, monosyllabic words. And so how do we decode this? How does our brain look at this and interpret this information so that we can understand how we read? So when we're looking at dyslexia, it's like when we're testing students for dyslexia, we're looking at what they can achieve and the unexpectedness between achievement and ability. So what they're able to do and what they're able to achieve, there has to be that unexpectedness. Like, why aren't we achieving at this level? So it's really just teach them how to read, to spell, decode, think for themselves, read fluently, comprehend, and empowering them to know that there's nothing wrong with me. This is something I have. And I am a compilation of all the things that make me me.
Yeah, I love that. I love that a lot. Um, can you walk us through maybe a few students or things that you guys have done either with Take Flight, Reading Horizons that have produced that change or have made that improvement, whether that's on the reading, comprehension, spelling, and then after that, I have another follow-up, but take us through, has there been improvements? How is that program or those programs help?
Huge. Yeah, it's a huge, they've made huge progress. It's explicit, it's intensive, it's multisensory. That means it's visual, it's auditory, it's kinesthetic, and it's tactile. And we have, these flashcards that name the letter. So we go through that every day. Keyword and sounds with that visual along with this sound. And as this spirals and builds and they learn rules, such as like with morphology, we have a base word. Well, what's a base word? It's the simplest form of an English word. Like, give me a word, guys. And they give me a word. So I'm like, okay, what can we add to the beginning or end of this base word, where it's going to change its form? It's really, change its form and usage, right? And its meaning. So we add, vowel suffix ing. So run is a base word, right? It can act on its own. Running. Well, what does ing mean? It means we're doing it right now. So anytime you see ing, that's a present tense verb. So through that, that's morphology. I think the biggest thing that I've seen with kids is their confidence grow through fluency practice. I do 1-minute readers every single day. It's like I time them. We do our cold read, our hot read. We challenge ourselves. We laugh at ourselves. And it's very hard to have great comprehension if you don't have that fluency, because your brain's working so hard to figure out what the heck am I reading. So I think the biggest change I've seen is kids' confidence just skyrocket. And that comes from relationships and making therapeutic decisions based on where children are at the time.
Fascinating, really interesting. Especially how it brings in, you said all the senses, visual, auditory, tactile. So, and then going back, so it's not 30 students. Is it a smaller group that it's more intimate, one-on-one?
Yeah, it's small group. Elementary, you have more students who are identified earlier on. And I'm just going to take like as the example. So typically it takes 2 years to go through, but you can take 3 years, you can take 4 years. You go at that student's pace, keeping up with the fidelity of the program. So a lot of time students are identified, hopefully, we hope they're identified earlier. And so that when they get to middle school, they've already gone through the process, and then they need progress monitoring, or maybe they need to be pulled for some reading fluency or for some spelling. So the groups in the middle school, high school are much smaller, but right now we have what's called the single pathway. And so it's a little bit of a misleading name in the sense that so single pathway, it used to be, I'm in Texas, so Texas is a little behind in making things happen, let's say that. So students get what's called an FIE, a full individual evaluation. Okay. So if I say, hey, you know what? I feel like my son may have dyslexia. It used to be like, oh, great. We can just test your kid through 504. Okay, well, that's a Civil Rights Act, and you get accommodations, but you don't have goals. So now, I mean, the law's always been there. Like you can go through special ed. Dyslexia is a specific learning disability under IDEA, and you can have those protections under special education. So the single pathway is I say I think my child is dyslexia. And the first thing we do is we have a team meeting. Every district and school calls it something different, an SST, student, a committee meeting. And we say, we look at multiple sources of data. We look at map data at STAR, we look at grades, parent information, teacher information, all kinds of stuff, because you don't want to look at just scores, right? Because they're just numbers. So we say, okay, we'd like to offer you a full individual evaluation so we can know all your child's strengths and struggles. For example, in auditory processing, working memory, short-term memory. We need to look at what your IQ is, not because we can use IQ, but that's that unexpectedness between what we can do and what we are doing right now. And parents have the option to say, yes, I would love that. That does not mean your child will qualify for special. It just means you get the most comprehensive assessment. Parents can say, you know what? I really, really feel like my child's doing great. It's just this one area, and I just simply want dyslexia. Then they can go through just dyslexia testing that's under 504.
Okay, that's
Lots
interesting.
of acronyms thrown out there. I know. My husband's wonderful. He tries to keep up.
Yeah, and I'm trying to write my notes so that later I could go because I hadn't
Sure.
heard of FIE, and you said IDAE.
So FIE, full individual evaluation. And that's when a diagnostician will, and sometimes a diagnostician, a speech therapist, depending on what a child needs to be tested on. We all pull our resources together and say, hey, you the OT, let's do some fine and gross motor skills if that's what's necessary. The dyslexia therapist, some schools and districts say the dyslexia therapist will do the dyslexia portion of the testing. The diagnostician will do the rest of it. If you need assistive technology. So it's a pretty comprehensive test. And if done right, it's wonderful.
So that's the starting point for any evaluation. And could it start as early as elementary school, earlier?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's child fine. So when we have child fine, that means if we suspect a student may have a disability, we need to start with intervention and taking data. And there's different levels, there's different tiers to that. There's, tier one, which is, hey, we're delivering all this instruction to our whole class. Tier two says, based on data, this student is really struggling maybe with knowing their letters and sounds. So we'll pull a small group and we'll have a very specific goal and work on that for a specified amount of time and see if there's any progress. If there's not a lot of progress, you say, you know what, maybe there's something going on here that we're missing and we need to dive deeper into it. So I'm gonna, all communication should be happening with families, and with other, teachers. And then we say, I really feel there may be a concern here for this. And that starts the process of let's meet as a team of teachers, let's pull the parent in, and which route do you want to go? Yes, we want to test through SPED, or no, we do not. We just want to keep going through our intervention, or yes, we want to have just dyslexia testing. It's kind of like with autism, right? You have to go through a full individual evaluation. Sometimes you see a neurologist,
Mhm.
you see specialists.
Yeah, that's fascinating. We're more in the autism, ADHD focus, and our products cater to that. So I didn't know too much about the dyslexia uh, format or what you have to go through to get those. But that's really interesting to understand, and I hope our audience, if they have someone struggling with this or they know of a family member, that this can be valuable information. I know it is for me. I have research I need to do after this of all
For
those
sure.
acronyms, but and maybe I can
And
reach
I'll help
out
explain it to you too. And one other thing I do want to say about the ADHD, I have ADHD, and there's a lot of comorbidity with dyslexia. There can be anxiety, ADHD. I mean, I have students, I'm like, your ADHD is shining bright today. Do you need me to help you turn that down? They're like, oh my gosh, I know. And they'll tell me, Miss Evans, you're being extra loud today. I'm like, I am, right? So we help each other monitor, because a lot of these things are not singular, it's multiple, it can be one or two things. Most things just don't stand on its own without something else popping up.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, for a specific subject, do you mainly focus on English and incorporating, having them learn how to read and spell, or do you also focus on like bringing science lesson into the mix or math or anything like that? Is it a
So with the fluency or comprehension, I can bring in something with science, and we can do a comprehension. We can do our fluency and comprehension on science. We do Mad Libs, and so to help them learn the parts of speech, because it's amazing how many kids are like, "What is a noun? What is a verb? Let's go. Let's use this in a fun way that helps you learn." But yes, I use a lot of passages or even something they're working on to say, how can we annotation? So let's circle our vocabulary words. Let's web and find context clues here that may help you understand it, or put a wow, I didn't know that. What kind of connections can you make? Text to self, text to text. What does this make you think? Like I tell them on Saturdays, I talk to myself all the time. So like talk to your story. What is it saying to you? So I do pull in different subjects in that way. I don't, the difference between teaching and the dyslexia therapy is I'm a therapist and I am a teacher. So I have to balance out holding that program with fidelity and the therapy, but also saying, hey, y'all, you need to learn how to read a clock. Let's go. You need to know your nouns, your verbs, your adjectives. And guess what? That works in with our base word plus our suffix, or
got it?
affix.
Got it. Okay, really helpful. Um, Switching gears here,
Mhm.
just about you, your mission, the passion. What's your mission in education, and what would satisfy kind of that hunger for you?
That's a very big question. My passion for education is that kids feel safe, um, emotionally. They have one adult that they can come to and they can trust and say, "Hey, I failed and I don't feel good about it," or "Hey, I did great today." I also think bringing awareness and collaboration. I feel like there's been a lot of I see it. This is black and white when it's really not. It's us working together. I wish there were, as a parent myself, it's easy to get very emotional and defensive for your child. But it's also like when my kids have come home and said, hey, da 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 da, I want to talk to your teacher first. I want to hear this out. And I've been very fortunate with that. Um, so I think looking forward, I think also seeing more real life skills implemented into the schools. How do I get a job? What does that look like? Let's role play. Get me an interview. What does it look like to, to rent an apartment? What does it look like to buy a house? You can write the same English paper over and over again. And what is that? What are you getting out of that? So I think more real and trade school needs to be in there. So many kids really, either they don't want to go to college or like, I don't want to have all those student loans. So why not teach them how to be a welder or allow them to go to nursing or human resources and get those real life skills? So when they get out of high school, they're just more prepared.
Yeah, I'm very happy you said that, and seems like either the culture is set up to like this is the only path and we have to do this. We've always done it like this, or whatever other things we say.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm glad you're saying that, and I'm sure a lot of people are thinking that because um, I know it was the same for me when I got out of high school. I felt like
Mhm.
I didn't know, like, okay, this is the real world. I didn't learn too much of this in high school. Like, okay, now I have to get re-education and kind of teach myself a lot of this stuff. Um, and that kind of takes me to the next question, which I think you answered here, but specifically for um, your students, your kids that have dyslexia, what are the fundamental, maybe 3 to 5, a handful of things that they have to have in order to be successful post high school? Like either that skills, character. I know you mentioned awareness, communication, real life, but uh, maybe 3 to 5 helpful foundational things that they have to have in order to post high school be successful, find some kind of success in the real life?
Well, I think first, I think it's important to understand what dyslexia is. It's a struggle with reading. It's understanding language. And they need to have that foundation of I can read this. I have the tools and the skills to decode these words, to bring meaning to it, and also have accommodations. You know, in real life, like I tell them, I go to yoga and I use my yoga block. That helps me be more successful. So really what they need is to have confidence in themselves. They need to have tools in their toolbox to know, like, hey, I may not be able to read this right now or yet, or maybe ever, but I can read this and I can apply these skills I've learned. Because what I have found, research shows, and I have found too, that these students are so creative and they have so many. I have, baseball players, artists, musicians. They are going to be successful. There's going to be more successful getting help. It's like anyone with ADHD, right? You can take medication, you can use cognitive behavioral therapy and learn tools. That's what I do. I have learned tools to help me be successful and practice it. So those fundamentals is confidence, knowing you can do something, even if it's difficult, and they're going to be successful, especially with support. It's just, and that's emotional support. And that's what they're receiving right now.
Hmm.
So with anything.
Awesome. I love that. Um, and as let's say parents, what additional support can we give in the home after they leave school? Like, is there more practice that we should do reading with them, practicing singing,
Reading
whatever
is
that
the
might be?
best thing. The best thing you can do is just read with your child, ask questions, have conversations. And that's just in general with any of our children, right? We want to have conversations, whether you have, a disability or a different ability or not. I think parents get very conflicted. I have my own private practice still. I do consulting with parents and I help them talk to their children. I do some ADHD coaching. And I think it's that initial shock of like, oh my gosh, or it's an initial relief, right? Like,
Mm.
oh, here's the answer, yay. So I think with parents, with resources, keep reading with the child, validate. Don't try to solve all the problems. I mean, even my boys have taught me that, Mom, I don't need you to solve my problem. I just need you to be quiet and listen. Okay, I can do that. So there's really no wrong answer. It's just be supportive, validate, help when you can, don't enable, empower. I think it's just that simple.
Awesome, really helpful, good advice. And then maybe for my own curiosity,
Mhm.
how does technology, I would even say video games, social media, uh, does it help or hurt um,
I think
children
it
in general?
depends. I'm sorry, go ahead. I thought you were done with your question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I think you got it.
I'm practicing my pause still.
Me too.
um, I think that's really individualized towards each student. Now, there's technology to help with reading and accessing information. Like right now, I think technology is good and bad. Everything is on Google Classroom, hardly any paper and pen or pencil or whatever.
Mm,
And a lot of students need to highlight, to write, to read, to mark up something and
mm,
have it printed for them instead of searching for it in a Google Classroom or something like that. Um, there is a lot of assistive technology. When I say that, one great app is or Google Chrome extension that I know of is voice and voice typing. So a lot of our kids need speech to text, right? Because they have the thoughts, but they may not be able to do that motor planning, with autism, with the motor planning to get it out, onto a paper. So it's like texting. You hit the record, you can talk, it records you and gets your thoughts. Um,
mm,
there's just a million things out there that can help our students with, and it can be read to them, audiobooks, great technology. As far as the video games, I think that's more of a parental issue or, parental guidance. I think social media, again, you just have to watch it because, some kids are super sensitive, and I mean that in a good way, and other kids love social media, other kids don't. we have to watch out for bullying. And so it just needs to be monitored in a way that's not invasive, but is monitored.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that as well. Tech can be a double-edged sword. There could be a lot of good apps, but there's downside and
Mhm.
some kind of monitoring and maybe on a personal level with each kid for them to understand like how much time can I spend on social media before my emotional state gets lowered, um,
Mhm.
and things like that. But I'm
It's
glad.
easy to get lost in social media instead of forming real relationships. I think that's a huge issue that, like with kids with autism, that social, like that video modeling, that's a whole different situation, right? But I know kids get very, um, they lose themselves in gaming and social media. I sound like I'm so old. Like I would like if I thought I was going to say this earlier, but it's true. Like I even like my son, he went off all his social media. He was like, I'm done with this. I was like, good for you. Like he had to figure out, like, good for you, because we're just missing out on that actual meeting up with people and
And
communicating.
even as adults, I think there's plenty of research paper that shows negative side effects of our own mental health with
Hmm.
relating with a lot of these apps. So even myself, like going through like I didn't like to be on specific apps, and I transitioned into other ones that felt more relaxed or that I would actually
Hmm.
learn something instead of seeing other people and what they're doing, and that would kind of
Hmm.
tumble my emotional state. It's like, what am I doing?
Right.
Wasting hours on this.
100%. 100%.
So even as adults, like I think for children, because they're developing, it's a little bit more difficult. But even as adults, if we're struggling, it's more important for us to know their role and how they interact with these stuff. So
Absolutely.
I hope we can have more of these discussions. I know
Yeah,
uh,
I'd love to.
you're leading the way. But maybe as we wrap up and get our busy Mondays ahead of us,
Hmm.
how can people connect with you if they have questions or just want to network? Where's the
Hmm.
best place to get a hold of you? Connect.
Yeah, there's two ways. The best way, I mean, is I have a Facebook group. There's around a little over 6,000 people, and that is Texas Dyslexia Support and Resources. And people are welcome to email me as well. It's very simple. It's Leslie, Lesli, and then F is in Frank Evans at gmail.com.
Awesome.
So they can contact me on the social media we were just talking about
Yeah.
on Facebook.
Well, I didn't know you have a Facebook group, so
Yeah,
I'll actually join that just to
that'd be great.
be a part of the community, and then I'll actually link that in the description below for you
Okay.
guys if you want to check it out. Please feel free to connect with ourselves. Leave us a comment if you found any of this helpful. Email Leslie if you guys have specific questions around dyslexia, any academic support. You've been really helpful. Like this has been fascinating. Just learning. My notes are kind of going long here, and I have a lot of research after this, but I'll let you know if I have any questions. And
Please do. And thank you. This is great. You're a wonderful
awesome,
chat with.
wonderful. Thank you so much. We'll chat
Thank
soon.
you. All right. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.